7, we're going to look at pain and the physiology of pain. The fancy word for our nerve pain fibers is nociception or nociceptive fibers, right? These are the pain fibers. There are 4 parts to nociception, and that is outlined here. Okay, the first part is transduction. So there has to be an actual pain stimuli that generates an action potential. And this is a sensory nerve. So in this example, they're showing a pen pricking the finger. And then in part 2, there is transmission. And that it means the movement of that action potential along the neurons of the body. Okay, so far we are in the peripheral nervous system. And keep in mind the central nervous system is the brain and spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is everything, all the nerves outside of the brain and spinal cord. Okay, eventually the information is going to go into the dorsal horn, or the dorsal nerve root into the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. So now we are in the central nervous system. Okay, and that transmission continues all the way up to the brain. So because this is pain and temperature fibers, the information goes into the dorsal nerve root, into the dorsal horn, and crosses over at the level of the cord. That gets into your dermatome mapping. So if we're looking at the first finger here, that would be the C6 dermatome. So cervical number 6, the nerve roots that come out of cervical number 6 go down and innervate digit number 2, or the first finger, in layman's terms. All right, so the information crosses over and synapses at the anterolateral system, the spinal thalamic tract, and then goes up to the brain, where the brain is going to begin the interpretation. Okay, so that's step 3 here, perception. So the brain interprets the signal as pain, and then you're going to have a motor response. So the descending pathways, or efferent with an E, or motor pathways, the signal is now coming down. But with it, when it comes to pain, our body has modulation. It has the ability to alter the pain. Okay, and that's the stuff we're going to look at. All right, the substances that are released. So this is because of a direct result of injury, and the substances are also part of the inflammatory response. Okay, so you're going to get things like potassium, hydrogens, lactate, histamines, bradykinins, acetylcholine, substance P, prostaglandins, serotonin. Okay, these things are designed to alter the membrane potential. Okay, this allows for depolarization, which is the action potential. Okay, prostaglandins. So this is part of the inflammatory cascade. So in our body, it starts out with phospholipids. And phospholipids gets converted into arachidonic acid. By phospholipase. Okay, there's the suffix ase, which means enzyme, which means it speeds up a reaction. So phospholipase A2. So in the presence of phospholipase A2, phospholipids is converted into arachidonic acid. And arachidonic acid is converted into a prostaglandin. Because of the presence of cyclooxygenase. Okay, there's the suffix ase, which means it's an enzyme. And we have cyclooxygenase 1 and 2. These are also known, for short, this is called a COX. So your COX-1 and COX-2, which stands for cyclooxygenase. Okay, COX-1s are found in platelets, GI mucosal cells, renal tubules, okay, and COX-2s are found in chondrocytes, and then endothelial tissue, and macrophages. Okay, the fact that the COX-1s are found in renal tubules, this is why a side effect of an NSAID is kidney issues, and another side effect is GI bleeding, also known as ulcerations. Okay, so you do have to be careful how much of NSAIDs that you do take, because you don't want to hurt the stomach, you don't want to hurt the kidneys. Okay, transmission. First, the sensory fibers we have. Okay, these are the proprioceptors. And then they name them. Okay, the proprioceptors are named type 1A, type 1B, and type 2. All right, their AKA is A alpha, which are the muscle spindles. The type 1B is also A alpha, Golgi tendon organ. And then type 2, A beta, which is your touch and pressure. Okay, the muscle spindle, that's found in the belly of the muscle, right? So, in fact, that's the area that will knot up and create a trigger point if the muscle is injured or overworked or spasmed. Golgi tendon organ. So that nerve is embedded within the tendon. And these, they're designed to be very fast. Okay, so type 1A, type 1B, and type 2 are very fast as far as neurological signal. Okay, these are also large, myelinated fibers. Okay, the myelin is that fatty substance that surrounds the neuron that increases the rate of transmission of the electrical signal. So it makes the conductions very fast. Okay, then there's your mechanoreceptors. And those are the type 2 and type 3 fibers, also known as A delta, which are free nerve endings, and these are responsible for cold sensory. And the nociceptors, which are thermoreceptors and pain and temperature fibers, or pain and temperature. So temperature, there's your thermoreceptor, and then P is for pain. Okay, and then there's type 3 and 4. These are the C fibers, and they are slow. The slow pain and heat fibers, and these are the non-myelinated. And the pain here is usually that dull chronic ache is what the C fibers recruit in the pain and temperature fiber world. Okay, there's a chart down here that explains, so it's a summary of what we just talked about, where it shows you the fiber type, its alternate name, so A alpha, type 1A, type 1B, A beta, type 2, if it's myelinated or not, and they all are except the C fibers, what their function is, so receptors, or the receptor part, so muscle spindle, Golgi tendon organ, and what it's for, okay, proprioception, and then where it's found in the fiber tract. Okay, so the posterior columns, the fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus would be an example of the posterior columns. And then here you have your anterior lateral system. Okay, here's a reminder of those tracks. So if you divide the spinal cord in half, right, you have your right and left side, and this is the anterior, this is the posterior aspect of the cord. And so you have your dorsal nerve root, and then your dorsal horn. Okay, ventral nerve root. The blue represents the sensory tracts, which means they are ascending, and the red represents the descending tracts or motor tracts. Okay, and here's the famous anterolateral system, which is responsible for the ascending pain and temperature transmission. Okay, this one is a reminder where pain and temperature will come into the dorsal nerve root into the dorsal horn, and it crosses over at the level of the cord ipsilaterally and then goes up to the brain for all that interpretation. Okay, on this slide, we're going to zoom into the cross-section of the spinal cord, and we're going to look now at specifically the dorsal horn, which is part of the gray matter, and you'll notice that they put some lines on it, and then Roman numeral 1 through 8. Okay, so each one of these sections, okay, so Roman numeral 1, that'll be a section. Roman numeral 2, that's a section or a lamina. Okay, so each one of these is called a lamina. So lamina 1, lamina 2, all the way down to lamina 8. Now each lamina has a function. All right, so let's go back this way. We'll notice that there is incoming information. Okay, so we have the pain and temperature pathways. So something got hurt, and that electrical signal is going to come in eventually into the dorsal nerve root, which is what we're looking at here. And then eventually it is going to go into the dorsal horn, and then it's going to have various synapses within the lamella. Okay, so the first lamina here, all right, so this is lamina 1. Okay, this is what starts the whole thing. Okay, it's essentially kind of like pushing over that first domino. As soon as you push the first domino, which starts the whole thing, then you just get this domino effect. All right, so this is what activates the neurons. And it is the track of Lissauer that brings this information into lamina 1. Okay, lamina 2, 3, and 4, you'll notice is a green. And collectively, this is called the substantia gelatinosa. Okay, this substantia gelatinosa is responsible for pain modulation, and pain transmission. Okay, pain modulation is another way of saying to ease up on the pain. Okay, here you're seeing another picture of the anterior lateral division, which will send signals, the pain and temperature signals, up to the brain. All right, another thing that's going to help with pain modulation is GABA, which stands for gamma. amino butyric acid. Okay, the pharmaceutical version of this is called gabapentin, but we have our own natural built-in GABAs. Okay, so what you're seeing here is our own natural built-in pain modulation called gamma aminobutyric acid. Okay, you might also read this as glutamate, which all these help modulate pain. All right, now eventually these can activate the C fibers, reducing the pain to just this dull ache. So that chronic dull ache. All right, lamina 5. Okay, lamina 5. This is responsible for referred pain. Okay, so if your kidney hurts, you might feel it in your groin area. Okay, that would be an example of referred pain. So you can thank lamina 5 for that. And then there is lamina 6, 7, and 8. And these are responsible for muscle and joint. Okay, so if your muscles and your joints hurt, lamina 6, 7, and 8 are responsible for those particular pain pathways. Okay, here is a close-up of a C fiber, how it would connect to the dermis, and then have some neurological wiring to the dorsal nerve root, and then its synapses into the dorsal horn. Creating the dull chronic ache. Okay, perception. This is the interpretation, awareness, and the meaning of the sensation, right? So pain is influenced by fear, fatigue, anxiety, diet, and lifestyle. People perceive pain differently. Some people are pretty tough. Some people are pretty untough when it comes to pain. So pain is relative depending on the person. Okay, some of that pain interpretation is a little bit of all the above. It's genetic, it's environmental, it's how mentally tough you are, and so on. Okay, all that goes into perception of pain. Areas of the brain that help interpret the pain is the somatosensory cortex. So that would go back to way back to ANP1 for you, where we looked at the brain. There's a part in front of the central sulcus, and there's a part behind it, right? The part in front of it is the motor area, so the precentral gyrus, and then the part behind is the postcentral gyrus, and that's where the homunculus was, right? So that's the somatosensory cortex area. Then there's the association cortex, the frontal lobe, and the limbic structures. And these go into, an easy way of saying this is this will go into the, let's say, the psychological part of pain. Pain threshold is the level of painful stimulation required to be perceived. Everybody is different on their pain threshold. Some have a high pain tolerance, others do not. Pain is expressed through jaw clenching, facial grimacing, muscle guarding, crying, moaning, groaning, and verbal descriptions of pain. All right, modulation is the process by which the body alters pain as it is transmitted along the pain pathway. Okay, the gate control theory of pain was coined by Melzack and Wall. In 1965. And they came up with this thing called, if you increase proprioception, which basically means movement, then you decrease nociception, which means you decrease pain. And this is where we get the TENS unit from. And that stands for transcutaneous electrical neural stimulation. All right, so in other words, there's a machine, so it's a handheld device, it's an electric device, and it's got channel 1 with some electric pads that kind of look like EKG pads, and then there's channel 2, and you place that on the hurt area on your body, and you simply turn up the electric input. And what that electricity is doing is it is increasing the proprioceptive neurological activity, which by default is going to decrease pain. Okay, so I issue this to my patients. I've used it myself. If you have used it or you have experience with it, you'll probably admit, like, yeah, it actually works pretty good. Okay, for pain modulation.